everyone to the Review and Scrutiny Committee on the 15th of January. So we're in this committee room as a trial for holding some meetings in the smaller environment, and hopefully it's also a bit warmer than the main council is. And so just to tell people that the camera will work slightly differently. So if you speak, it will pan in your general direction, and the microphones will pick you up at all times, even if you're not the person addressing the meeting. So just be aware of that as well. So we've got a new member of the committee, Councillor Robinson Payne. He tells me he knows everybody, so we won't go round. And we've got apologies today from Councillor Welsh and Councillor Allen, and there's no substitutions. So I think is that everything?
Okay. And Councillor Towsey, substitute.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Duncan is unable to attend. I'm attending as his substitute. I'm Councillor Clive Towsey-Hinton.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So first of all, then, we need to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 13th of November. Are there any matters of accuracy, first of all? No, so we're happy to approve those. Yes. Any matters arising that aren't otherwise on the agenda? Oh. So just to remind people to declare any interest, and if during an item you discover you do have an interest, to let us know, absent yourself if necessary, or just not to take part in that discussion. So the first item on the agenda then is for Councillor Paling to give us an update on her portfolio area of environmental services operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. First of all, if you okay, I'm just going to give an overview of waste management, allotment, cemeteries and street fencing. Now, it could be hours if we went through those in any detail, and I'm really only going to try and give snapshots. Some things this committee has already considered in great depth, so I'm not going to touch really on floods, other than to say thank you. Mainly to residents who have in the main been very understanding about all of the constraints that meant to all of the services in waste management when the teams were doing anything but their own jobs. So bins were late being emptied. Before the floods happened, we had that really hard bout of cold weather. And I didn't realise until Mel explained that we couldn't empty the bins because the lids were frozen and they wouldn't empty into the vans. Things like that give you a right nightmare when you can't get on with the main job. But thank you to the residents who were so understanding, and thank you very much to all the teams who did work so hard during those times, whether it was delivering sandbags, removing fallen trees, unfreezing the leaves, the lids. So it's not an explanation, not an apology, just an explanation. And I think that's really all I wanted to say about that. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth about waste management. This committee looked at waste management in depth a couple of years ago, and Cabinet adopted the waste and recycling policy in June 22 to formalise the approach to waste management and to address areas of underperformance in relation to recycling rates and levels of recycling contamination. That is going on and continuing. We need to do more. We need to bring a fresh focus to the local households in what contaminated rubbish is. Many years ago, you might all remember these. You're all old enough to remember these if you were a county householder some years ago. And we liked these a lot. And I would hope that tomorrow we might discuss, at the Waste Management Board, bringing this sort of level of what you can recycle back into being, because although we have these reminders with no thanks, yes, please, it is quite difficult for residents to understand the recycling needs of Veolia compared to what they think should be recyclable. I think it's an ongoing education exercise, and we are going to be trying to introduce the Abavus system to the bins, where we will be putting tags. It's an education campaign to increase the recycling and reduce contamination. First of all, it's going to be a pilot in 3 areas using tags on the bins saying that your bin is contaminated. Eventually, this, when it is put onto a bin, will relate back immediately to the central office so that we know why that bin hasn't been collected. The software isn't quite ready yet, and hopefully will be put in the vans as soon as possible. Mel may have an update for me on that, but I'm not sure that there is anything from last week.
No, that's still to be done.
We're still picking up. When it's there, people will be able to tell us that by scanning this or using the other methods of how to get in touch with us, that their bin hasn't been collected, and find out more about recycling. And if it doesn't get recollected soon when they take out the contaminated material, we should be able to monitor it much more quickly than we have been doing in the past. Problem for me has been that it's a slow process. We're not up and running yet.
Are we taking questions?
I was hoping to take questions at the end, but if you prefer, okay, thank you. The QR codes direct the resident to the information about the contaminants, but that still might be difficult for them to understand because, well, I find it difficult to understand, and I'm into recycling as much as I can possibly be. So I think I'm going to leave it at that because we're going to get questions at the end. The government has announced simpler recycling, which is a renaming of their previous contamination exercise. And we want to actually look at this. Simpler recycling is going to mean that the consistency in household and business recycling initiative will now mean that all England, and it is only England, will be able to recycle the same materials all through the country, which will help some of the confusion. Because at the moment, so many people say, well, you can recycle it in Leicestershire, why can't you recycle it here? Hopefully that will go. And the most important thing for us is that part of that will be food collection. Some people have been really keen on waste food being collected for many years on this committee, and it's been a regular question. I know that this is going to be a bit of a headache for us. Discussions are ongoing about the number of bins that will be needed for each household. Particularly at the moment, we recognise that the glass bins, which is why there's a picture of the glass bin up there, are very heavy when they're full and have resulted in quite a few of the operatives getting back problems and leading to staff sickness, which we could well manage without. So we're looking at different ways, and that's throughout the county, looking at it. The most important thing for me is the government's indicated it's going to pay for the setup costs, pay for the new freighters, the caddies, etc., but there's no information on how the revenue costs of running a new freighter. That must mean a whole new team at least. We don't know how many freighters will be needed. And how the fuel's going to be paid for the new freighter. They're all question marks. And it was only on Friday that DEFRA sent out to all local authorities details about the funding. Gedling will receive an £109,000 to set up the kitchen caddies. This is for 2027. £251,000 for curbside caddies and £614,000 for vehicles. Mel doesn't know I'm about to ask you this question. I hope he's got it off the top of his head. How much does a vehicle cost these days?
A standard diesel vehicle is approximately 350,000, and if we down the line, which is a future plan, move to an electric vehicle to reduce our carbon emissions, you're looking at £500,000. The hydrogen technology vehicles at this moment in time are out of reach. They're nearly £800 million each.
Yeah.
That is out of reach, yeah. It's 800,000.
So we've definitely got enough for one vehicle, but if we need two, then there might not be enough in that grant to cover it. Anyway, that's what we have been told that we are going to get. I think that an important factor for me is that all of these elements are considered by the county-wide Waste Management Board, and the County-Wide Waste Management Board has a contract with Veolia. The County Council is actually responsible for the contract, but all of the borough, district and borough councils meet regularly with them to discuss the contract and future plans. And a major one has been how we're going to implement this food waste recycling. The districts have been lobbying for improved, wider recycling. And Veolia at the last meeting said they might be able to introduce aluminium trays, but they know they can't introduce aluminium foil because there's no market for them to do the recycling, and it's a costly operation. So there are so many constraints on what we as Gedling can do. First of all, we have to persuade the whole of the county that it's a good idea. Then we have to put that into a contract with Veolia. And if we change a contract that's still got some time to go, at least 10 years, I think it is still to go, that will be at a cost to the authorities that want the change. So it's a useful board. That they seem to be listening more to the local authorities than they were, and I hope that they will be listening hard and we'll be talking through how we are going to implement, especially the waste food management. So that's basically all how we collect rubbish. You all know you get your bin collection card as to which day it is and whether it's going to be a glass collection. In the past, until this year, it was an actual card with your bin. Last year, we chose to try and save money by just having it online, which hasn't been as successful as we would like. And we are proposing to go back to actually having something firmer for residents to put behind the mantelpiece, on the mantelpiece, whatever it is that residents do, because it is more useful for them to have a piece of paper than to have to rely on remembering to check on the website, even though many of the residents do have the notice sent to them weekly. If you don't know to remember to check your emails weekly, you don't get that reminder because it needs to be in other things as well as an email for me. We've got to get it into WhatsApp and all the other services. And that's what our IT review is going to hopefully help us do. I'm moving on to allotments. I found this very interesting when I first came to this portfolio, that I really did not know anything about our allotment service. So we directly manage 3 sites in Arnold. There are another 5 sites across the borough managed by allotment associations. The ones in Arnold are Rookery Gardens on Harbeck Road, and another site in my ward that the name of the road I cannot remember. Thank you. But the self-managed sites are in Netherfield, Gedling Road, Leopold, Robin Hood in Carlton, and Stoke Lane in Trent Valley. And all sites are full, as it were. All GBC sites have full tenancies on all of the plots. There are waiting lists. On average, it's a 2-year wait for an allotment. The list is kept up to date annually, and in September 2023, there were 30 to 40 people on the waiting list for GBC managed sites and 40 to 45 people for the association sites. In addition to that, there are other sites that are run by the parish councils in Burton Joyce, Calverton and Woodborough. And this is a complete surprise to me, how we decide that we need a new allotment site. They're planned for large new builds as part of the 106 agreement. So currently we've got new allotment sites planned for Magenta Way in Teal Close, at Topwig Hay and Westhouse Farm in Bestwood. I don't think many people know about the fact that these are likely to come on online. The way the allotments are looked after is incredible. We look after the hedges, but individual committees make sure everything else is running well. And if they have problems with an allotment owner, that is taken to their committee. So we don't have many allotments that aren't being actively managed as individual sites. Click. Cemeteries are also part of the portfolio, which again seems interesting, that we have to know that although Carlton Cemetery has space remaining, Redhill is now all but full. Gedling Cemetery, that I didn't even know existed until I got this portfolio, has 11 to 15 years of space available, but that will soon run out if we don't start looking. The whole lot of the burial sites will run out if we don't start looking. And the only site that we can possibly think where we might be able to buy extra land is the Gedling site. The Parks and Street Care Services maintain the cemeteries, and they are to standards set to ensure that we have a pleasant and peaceful and tranquil environment that's also safe and free from crime and antisocial behaviour. The burials, individual burials, are managed between the teams with the funeral directors to make sure they meet the rigorous religious, secular, ethnic and cultural needs of the bereaved and their relatives. And I think it's a credit to our team that they are able to do that across a great breadth of diversity. So thank you to those teams. Street cleansing. Every year we empty over 48,000 litter bins and 9,000 additional dog bins and clean over 2,000 miles of streets and footpaths, as well as the public places and parks that we quite already know about. And when I first got this portfolio, we had a stream of emails from someone who regularly was saying, the bin hasn't been emptied. And it was because it had got missed, and it was very hard to find when we finally pinpointed where this couple of dog bins were in Digby Park, well away from where we thought that they might be situated. But they have now been found, and they are now on the regular emptying cycle. So one of those things, when people do complain, they are investigated, and eventually we do get to the bottom of things. Another thing that we're especially keen on, it takes up a lot of time, it's really hard to budget, is fly tipping. We cleared 1,220 fly tips at a cost of £189,200, equivalent to £1.61 per household last year. You know, I reported this to full council. Thank you, Councillor Smith, for asking the question. But I thought it was worthwhile stating it again. If it's a big fly tip like that, we're more likely to find an accidental leaving of a detail that will give us the opportunity to go back to the resident about the fly tip. Now, for me, the worst thing about this is usually the resident has paid someone to take away their rubbish, but they have forgotten the most important fact about checking that the person taking away their rubbish has a licence to do so and will take it to a recognised tip rather than fly tip it. So even when we will take the resident to court, they may know who they used, but so often they don't even know who they used. So I think we need to do more about educating the public about only using licensed operatives to take away their household rubbish and to always get a receipt. So if they do take it to the wrong place and it gets traced back to the resident can help us find the fly tipper. I think it's going to be really, really useful to do that. And my next point is about litter picking. It's a real problem for us to maintain all of those streets in the way that we try to do. It's not easy. We haven't got enough teams to be out there every day, everywhere. So a big thank you to the litter picking groups. And you know, they're all volunteers, and we're trying to make sure that we can keep in contact with the groups, that they can have blue bin bags, so that we're clear that they are groups that have been out officially. They notify the refuse collectors, who will collect it the next day after the litter has been picked. And it ties in with the big clean, which will be happening again in a national campaign, so that we can do more to educate people. I think that's one of the most important things about waste recycling. The whole of the programme really is dependent on communication, letting our residents know maybe what delays are about, letting them know about new initiatives, and making sure that they do their bit, if they can, to keep the place clean. I have done, with Mel's help, a fuller report on the services, but I thought you didn't want me to read what is 9 pages to know, 13 pages of report, but it is available if you want it to be circulated with the minutes. So I thought that would be a better way of handling it than reading it out verbatim. So my last point. Any questions?
Before we go into questions, did you want to add anything? Or
No, I'm happy to host questions.
okay, well, obviously there are going to be questions. So, Councillor Smith and then Councillor Whiting.
I've got a
You
few,
want-
so sorry, Marge, because there's quite a lot of good detail there. Great that we're trying to push better recycling rates. I think that's really good. And I appreciate that the scanning of the tags will then hopefully tell them what's contaminating it, and then we'll go back out. Do we plan to go back out within 3 days or just leave it till the next collection? Because if we leave it to the next collection, it might increase fly tipping, and I wondered if the department had done any, research on that and the impact of that, and what the cost of the council is to keep going back.
Right, I'm going to say my understanding is that we go back when the resident tells us they've removed the contamination.
Yeah. So we have a misbin crew, and they will go out within 3 days to recollect the bin in again once the resident has let us know that they've removed the contaminant.
And do we know roughly how many people, have you done any forecast on how many people we expect that to go out, what impact that has on the workload of the misbin people?
Not recently, we're going to do a review on that, but we haven't done that recently.
Because you might, first week that happens, you might get 50 or you might get 1,000, you know.
Yeah, no, it's not those sort of numbers. It's not. It is smaller numbers. It's about 50 to 60 a week.
And what we do know is that some areas are more prone to it than others. Mm. So our education campaign may highlight what it is that's causing it in the 3 areas that we're piloting. And then as we introduce it wider into other areas, we'll get a better detail, which should give us better forecasting for future years. But at the moment, we know we've missed a bin because of contamination, but it's hard to put it into figures until we've got all those stats together.
And one of the reasons that it's slightly difficult is there's more than one reason for missed bins. So there is contamination, but there's also roadworks going on at the top of the street, so they can't access the road, or there may be an inappropriately parked builder's van on the corner so that the HGV vehicle cannot get round physically, so we have to miss the street and move on to the next one and carry on with the collection. So in those sort of scenarios, the whole street's reported as missed. But when they get to the end of the day, they will go back to that street to retry. Otherwise, it will be reported as missed, and then they'll go back the next day to collect.
But we're confident there's enough capacity in the team to...
Yes, yeah, currently there is, yeah.
So come on that point.
Well, just on that point. So do the operatives actually look in the bins before they go on the back of the truck?
Yes, they lift them in to have a look in.
Right.
Because the problem is, if it's contaminated, they can take it all the way up to the Mansfield MRF or the Free Street MRF, and it'll be refused at point. So then they have to come all the way back and go to the incinerator in London Road in Nottingham in order to deposit the load. So it's a wasted journey. So they will check the bin for contaminants. The old system used to be a circular bin sticker that we just used to slap on the side of the bin. The problem is keeping doing that year in, year out, people start to glaze over because they've seen it before. So the bin tags is a new idea, a fresh idea to try and get residents to notice, oh, this is different. And hopefully we might get a better response.
Sorry, I've got a few, sorry. Before Christmas, Gedling Borough Commons put out a big thing about calendar cards for the bin collections not going out in paper, hard copy, but you then just said, is that being reviewed again now?
That's part of what is that review. I mean, it's not...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, because that's different to what we put out. Finally, street cleansing. After a flood like we've just had, will the sweepers prioritise sweeping the drain covers of those areas that have flooded, because they obviously have debris on top of them from the flood, so that if it rains again within the week or whatever, water can get away rather than...
We do.
So,
so immediately following a flooding event, we will go out and sweep the streets, and then county will come in with the gully sucking equipment. We don't have that. That's a Highways Authority's responsibility. So if a drain is blocked with debris that's washed in during the storm, they'll actually suck the drain out entirely and then replace the grill again, and we will sweep the gully accordingly.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. I've got a few as well, I'm afraid. You said the bin tags are going to be trialled in 3 areas initially. Have we decided which 3 areas those are going to?
The first 3 areas are Mapley, Lamley and Burton Joyce.
Okay.
At one point, we were considering Netherfield and realised that until the whole system was in, it wouldn't be really helpful to do it in Netherfield, because we needed to be able to give the residents more information.
Sure. Thanks. And then the figures you gave us from DEFRA for the food waste collection, which starts in 2027.
Yes.
They've given us figures at the start of 2023.
Yes.
Is that baked in, this is the amount of money we are going to get in 2027, because £109,000 for kitchen caddies now is not going to be worth £109,000 in 2027.
If I could,
Yes.
if I could interject, it's not baked in, it's all under negotiation at the moment. We've
Okay.
done modelling within the Nottinghamshire area, and our modelling works out that we're requiring 12 vehicles. The government funding is saying we only need 9, and we're not quite sure what algorithm they've used to arrive at that total. But bear in mind, we will not be delivering the food waste service until October 2027, so there is room to
There's still some negotiation
negotiate
because
and better understand.
We think.
It's a carpet response that they've given across the country, but we've got to get into the detail now
Yeah.
to work it out in individual areas.
but a key part of the detail is inflation could take out
Indeed.
20% of that value
Indeed.
by
And-
the end of 2027.
And as Councillor Baling alluded to, there's huge areas that haven't actually been identified yet. There's additional capital funding and some revenue funding going to be made available, but no detail as to specifically what that's for. They've talked about funding for the freighters, for the bins, food caddies. There's also the issue of food liners and how that's handled, because obviously if residents are to line their caddies in the kitchen, we would wish that they're recyclable liners, not plastic bags,
Yeah.
otherwise they're contaminating bins. So there's all that to be worked through as well. And it's ongoing. So the Joint Waste Management Committee that the portfolio holder attends is a Nottinghamshire-wide one, with members from across Nottinghamshire inputting into it, as well as Veolia and Nottinghamshire County Council as a lead waste authority. We're the collection authority, so to a degree we're duty-bound to deliver on what the lead waste authority wants, and Veolia, which is the PFI contract that's run across Nottinghamshire at this moment in time, and that doesn't expire until 2032.
Okay.
So it's still in contract with that. One of the big issues, if I could just add at this point, is there aren't many end processors in the UK at present. So yes, we're talking about recycling foil trays, plastic film, Tetra Paks and that type of thing. But at the moment, most of that is shipped abroad because we can't process it in this country. And it's got to be processed profitably, otherwise some of the contractors are just not interested in signing up to the contracts. They've got to ultimately make some degree of funding out of it. So that's all being worked on as well. They will have to build processing units within the country so that these waste streams can then go to these own processing units, and the materials can actually be recycled rather than just bailed up, stuck on a ship, ends up in Indonesia, and we're not quite sure what happens.
Ends up in a river. Yeah.
Which is possibly what's happening at the
Yeah.
moment.
Okay, thanks. And then just coming back to the cards, I think that it'd be good to bring them back. I mean, me and my neighbours have a weekly game of brinkmanship as to who's going to put it in first, so that we can copy each other. But I'm sure we all have residents in our wards who don't have email, who don't have WhatsApp, who don't have the internet. So I agree that saving as much money by going electronic as possible, but bearing that, keeping in mind those residents who rely on that sort of thing to do that would be good. And then just finally, allotments on Magenta Way. Do you know how many plots there are going to be at this stage?
Ooh, now you're
Anybody
asking.
know? No.
Like a ballpark.
I think it's about 16. Because
16.
I've actually seen the plan, and it's in the order of that number. It's about 16 plots, 16 new plots that don't exist currently.
So
Don't get the residents to put their bids in before we're actually ready for it.
So I've got questions from Carl and Roxanne. Does anyone else want to ask a question? Right. Oh, just speed up a bit.
Thank you, Marge, and thank you for the presentation. I found it really useful just to sort of see what you've been up to and all the work that's going on. I just wanted to briefly raise the matter that you raised in your presentation in relation to the government's proposals for the so-called simplified recycling and the food waste introduction to Gedling. I suppose it's just to briefly note that this has been highlighted now as a financial risk to the council, and in the corporate risk register I know that members at the more recent audit committee raised their concerns and felt that unless the government was looking to provide the adequate funding for these changes, this does create significant challenges for us, as you've said.
Yes.
And I suppose I'd just like to know that we, as an authority, are doing everything we can to strain every sinew, really, to lobby the government to provide the adequate funding to implement these government projects. And perhaps maybe through the LGA or through, I don't know, through Mel or through Mike Hill, through the sort of senior officer forums and the meetings that senior officers have nationally. Because ultimately these changes in these government projects are going to impact our finances. We're going to have to find the money from something else
That's right.
to introduce this new system.
It's a good headline to say that the capital is being met, even though it's questionable if it is being met fully. But when there's nothing about how we'll meet that of the revenue cost, it's a big risk for us. And yet it's been, it's a statutory service and we will be required to do the new collection as well as maintain the old collection. So yes, it is a big risk for us.
Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Paling and Mel. It's great to hear that you're looking into more modern ways of informing people about when the bins are in, especially WhatsApp. I know we have a street WhatsApp where we actually tell each other every week which bins is supposed to out. A contest, who's the binfluencer to tell the others first.
Can we use that binfluencer?
Yeah, it's well known. Binfluencer, the person who first puts the bin out. But one of the things I'm wondering about is what criteria did you use to decide which areas you're going to trial the bin tags? I mean, Mapley, Lamley and Burton Joyce, they wouldn't be the first ones that sprung to mind when I was thinking high levels of contamination. But if they've been chosen because of that, what work is being done to include parishes for at least two of these areas are parished, and if it's education that is needed, and again, I welcome the discs as well, because there is a lot of education needed, especially people who move in from other areas like the city. What can we do to get the parishes involved and get them doing some of the education using their precepts on it?
My immediate answer to that is it's a comms question rather than a waste management question. But we have been working with comms about what we need more of in terms of having a much wider communications programme for all of the waste issues that are coming up. So I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
So as it currently stands, it was the levels of contamination in those particular areas, believe it or not. There are some surprises there, I'll acknowledge, but it was the level of contamination. That's why those areas have been targeted. And bear in mind, in the other areas, we are still doing the bin sticker. So if somebody's contaminated the bin in another area, be it a parish area or wherever, we will apply a bin sticker to it, which is the old way we used to do it and still do. So that process is still ongoing. But yeah, that's where it stands at the moment.
For me, I think sometimes people are too keen to recycle, are recycling the wrong things, contaminating the bins for all the good reasons that they think this should be recyclable. They know it, the packaging says it is recyclable. But when you actually read our detailed information, it's not recyclable for the reasons that Veolia give us as to they cannot make it work. And that is especially for me if the containers that they think are recyclable are dirty.
Right, so I've got questions from Councillors Brown, Smith and Pope, and then I think we'll have to stop. So, Councillor Brown.
Oh, sorry. First of all, the labels that you use, will they be recyclable? Obvious question.
And printed on recycled paper.
I'm really, really pleased that you're reintroducing the bin cards. I have 10 elderly people around me and I am that binfluencer person. So mine goes out 3:00 on a Sunday, and then as soon as mine goes out, they know what colour and everything.
So bin cards have always been available. So if people can't access them electronically, they can just contact the council and we will send them.
They didn't know that.
It's because Gedling put comms out before Christmas
Yeah,
announcing
saying
that they've
there was
stopping.
Yeah.
Well, there is a
Can't
move.
flap for that.
But the comms.
There is a move to go online, but to be fair, I didn't read the detailed comments. There's something in the wording that was.
Because I got my neighbours then panicked and said, can you go and get some photocopies
Yeah.
for us? So I said, yeah, not a problem at all. So if we can get copies, that's even better. I can get those. Also, whilst we're discussing the calendar, would it not be prudent to put on the brown garden waste and then a note at the bottom just highlighting what the garden waste is to try and offset some of the expense? If people see the garden waste, they might think, what is this? Don't know what it is. Get more information and then sign up.
Yeah.
And has that actually gone up again this year?
This year, as in this financial
It's coming year,
next financial year.
The bill's will be going up for next financial year.
And how much has it gone up again?
In fairness, the report hasn't been authorised yet, so until it's authorised, I don't really want to say.
I think I've already paid. I've already had a bill.
Oh, for the garden waste?
Yeah.
Right, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know.
£46. Probably. This is off the top of my head because it was from my own reminder that it's due.
I've had a reminder, but I've put it to one side. It's on my to-do list. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Marge. Again, I think we won't go over old ground, but again, the reminder card being printed out, if you consider the amount of printing that's being used by individual households compared with the cost of the central printing. However, it is a saving to the council, but I think it perhaps is false economy. The allotments and cemeteries, are we subsidising those services, or do we run a surplus, or do we break even? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I know the cemeteries are not subsidised. They cover their costs, but allotments are subsidised. They're a provision to members of the borough, but they are subsidised in terms of the land that's made available to them.
Right, and perhaps that's something in this day and age we ought to reconsider, depending on that by how much we're subsidising. And just final, perhaps a flippant question, but you're working on the software for these tags. It's not being done by Fujitsu, is it?
Almost certainly. I do not know the answer to that.
No, it's not.
Secret overnight bin deposit.
It will be in jail.
Thank you. Just a question about the litter and dog refuse site. What's the cycle of emptying, and are you able to vary that if there's evidence that a bin is frequently overflowing?
Yes.
Because I certainly in my ward, there's a few dog waste bins that frequently are full, and there's a range of bags on the floor around it, which obviously becomes a health hazard.
So yes, the answer to that is yes, we can vary it. So we'll go in the mornings and do all the town centres. That's from 6 till 9, and then after that we target the high paid pedestrian zones like outside schools and outside shopping precincts around the borough, and then beyond that we then roll out into the suburbs and the housing estates. And then we've got teams of sweepers that go out, and then teams of bin emptiers that follow them as well. So all the waste, be it a dog bin or a standard litter bin, is classed now as mixed municipal waste. So it all goes into the same place and to the incinerator in Nottingham. But yeah, in terms of a bin, if you're aware of it getting over full, please do report it, because we can treat it as what we call a hotspot. So that means that bin will be targeted for the next few weeks to understand better what frequency. Yeah. So to understand what frequency we need to move to emptying it at.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there are constraints, because if we're only sending a vehicle out X times a week, we can't be specifically going out again just to empty one bin. It's got to be done as part of a holistic round. But we can tweak those rounds to better improve the service.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I must be a really lucky person whose bin schedule's not really changed, because I'm recycling and using last year's calendar. I managed to work out the dates a day different.
Next year will be difficult because of the leap year.
Yeah.
People getting completely confused.
But That's a lot of questions we've had, whether that's the format of the room or just everyone's interest, probably everyone's interest in bins and waste management, but thank you very much. Thank you. Will the presentation be available?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. So we did spend quite a long time on that, so if we're running late, that is fine. So the next item on the agenda is update on the progress and consultation for the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan. Hello. Hello. Oh, you want me to sit?
No.
Oh. So are you just doing this, Alice?
I am, yes. I think Mike's going to assist with any questions at the end.
Thank you very much. You want questions at the end?
Probably easier because I've got quite a few slides. I thought we'll go through them quite swiftly, and then plenty of time for questions at the end. Thank you. So yes, thank you for the opportunity to come along today and just give you an update on where we are with the Greater Nottingham Plan, and just to talk to you a little bit further about our consultation strategy. So in terms of our local plan, hopefully you're all familiar with the fact that we do have a two-part local plan. Part one was adopted back in 2014 now, and that was a joint strategic plan with Borough and the City. And then we have a more detailed part two local plan, which was adopted in 2018. So at the moment we are reviewing our strategic plan, and it's going to be retitled the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan. We are now working with Rushcliffe as well. So there'll be 4 authorities that will form part of this alliance. And once that is adopted, then we'll have the opportunity to review our Part 2 local plan. So in terms of public engagement to date, we have undertaken 2 rounds of public engagement to review the strategic plan. First of these was the growth options consultation, which was back in spring 2021 now, which was an informal stage. And the second round was the preferred approach, which we've had 2 stages of that. We had the consultation on the preferred approach to housing and employment, which was about a year ago now. And then we also had the consultation on the preferred approach to strategic logistics, which concluded in November of last year. So in terms of that consultation, we, for the growth options, just going back to the growth options consultation, just to give you a bit more detail, it covered a very wide range of questions at a very high level, and it covered all the matters that you'd expect to see in a local plan. So housing growth, employment growth, climate change, all the big issues that we're all concerned about, and in particular the green belt for Gedling. The consultation on our growth options was back in 2020. We extended it for 10 weeks. That was primarily because it ran through sort of our COVID time, peak of COVID, and we felt it was a fairer way to ensure that we got a better response rate. We also had a further consultation in February 21. That was because we had flagged up to us that there was a firewall issue with the City Council, which was blocking some of the responses coming in. So we picked up on that as well. We thought, right, we need to do another round of consultation. We don't want to fall foul of the regs. And so that happened in the February of 21. As a result of those consultations, we got over 5,000 comments. So we're very pleased with that. So in terms of the next round of consultation, which is the Regulation 18 consultation, as I say, we had a round of consultation in January and February of last year, and that focused primarily on strategic matters, housing provision and employment need. Again, we had a good response rate, 250 stakeholders responded, and we had well over 800 comments. In terms of who responded, a significant proportion, not surprisingly, were from the development industry and landowners. It is quite a high-level document. It's the Part 2 local plan where we do tend to get more local interest from residents. Encouragingly for us, as a policy team, the vast majority of our representations are now coming through our consultation portal, so becoming increasingly more digital, less letters going out, so we're not sending out hundreds and hundreds of letters. Primarily, we're contacting people today via email. The comments that we received were quite broad and covered the key topics that we expected, our vision, and our housing strategy, housing need, and not surprisingly from developers talking about alternative sites that they're interested in. So in terms of the strategy, one key comment was the need to increase our plan period. That was quite understandable. Our current plan period for that consultation went up to 2038. We're told that we need to provide a 15-year plan period. At the time when we started the process, we thought we would clearly have a 15-year period. But as the process has taken us so long, it was unlikely by the time we adopted that we would have 15 years. So we are now looking at extending the plan period to 2041. Comments that we received quite surprisingly were reduce our dependence on brownfield and strategic sites. We obviously want to focus on brownfield sites. And also, this consultation was at a high level. It was about strategic sites. So I suppose part of the difficulty is that we do have a two-part plan. So this is the high-level strategic plan that we're reviewing now. And then we focus down on the more fine detail through the Part 2 local plan. Another question that was raised was we should have a wider distribution of development, including key settlements and other villages. Again, I think that's again related to the scale of development. Primarily, when we're talking about strategic sites, particularly for housing, we're looking at sites in the region of about 500 dwellings. In terms of comments that we received on housing, there were a number of comments about we should be using the standard methodology to calculate what our housing target should be. That is something that we do, and it's something that's been reaffirmed by the latest release of the National Planning Policy Framework just before Christmas. Another question that was raised was in terms of the city's unmet need, and that should be met through the adjoining districts of Gedling, Broxton and Rushcliffe. Again, that's something which was referred to in the new MPPF, that the uplift figure for the city has been reaffirmed. That's primarily due to the additional uplift that certain cities received, which was an additional 35%, which was a huge number to be accommodated. But the new MPPF does say that every effort should be made to ensure that that additional uplift is found within the city area. So again, quite interesting that in terms of Gedling, there is no specific duty for us to take on board that additional uplift. In terms of strategic sites, there was talks about some of the sites being delayed and there should be additional sites to accommodate that. We would counter that by saying that we do have an allowance within our methodology, so we have lapse rates, so we understand the delivery speeds of some of our key sites. Job creation from the Freeport, that has been accounted for through our employment land study. Again, due to the timescales involved with this process, the potential benefits of HS2 have perhaps diminished now because of the announcements of the change in the direction of the HS2 line and where it's going to terminate. In terms of buffers, again, that's very much linked to the delay in some of our strategic sites. We don't feel that there's a need for buffers because we understand our housing delivery rates. And as I said earlier, we have had many additional alternative sites submitted across the plan area, not just for Gedling. So just as a bit more background, just to give you a very high level understanding of our housing need for Gedling, we have a target from the standard methods as set by government of 8,334. And our current supply, as of the end of the year, including windfall, is 6,500 or thereabouts. So that shortfall needs to be met somehow. Primarily, we are looking to undertake a strategic site extension to Totwigay Farm, and that's going to be in the region of 710 dwellings. And we are also looking at non-strategic allocations in our Part 2 local plan when we review that. So smaller allocations, and that may well include growth in the key settlements of Bestwood, Calverton, Ravenshead. So just to give you an understanding of Totwigay Farm, the area in red is the existing Aligned Core Strategy allocation. And we have got a outline consent for that site. And we currently, I think that's for 805 homes, but we do now have a reserve matters application which came in just at the end of the year for 763 homes. We're hoping that that will be determined prior to the summer of 2024. So in addition, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at an extension to Totwigay Farm to help meet some of our additional housing need. And that will take place within the safeguarded land, so the area to the north of the red line. And that area is not classed as green belt. It has been taken outside of the green belt. So that's the area that we'll be focusing on. And that area should yield in the region of about 710 homes. We have been undertaking a number of assessments in that area at the moment to understand more properly the impact on LIMBY particularly, and the impact on the conservation area there. So there are a lot of sensitive issues to take into play. So moving back to the preferred approach, we obviously received a number of comments on employment. So one of the key concerns was that we're not taking on board enough about strategic logistics, that we shouldn't be deferring that to the next stage of the plan. We have taken that on board, and as part of that, we did have an additional round of consultation on this issue. Other matters included distribution of employment and the quantity of employment land. Again, we've used our evidence base to help understand what our needs are. We had the Nottingham Core and Outer Employment Land Study, which was undertaken by independent consultants for us, Litchfields, and they provide the general amount of employment land that's required up to 2038 in this instance for offices, industrial and warehousing. In terms of strategic distribution then, as I said, we felt it was appropriate to undertake an additional round of Regulation 18 consultation, which could purely focus on that, which we undertook back in September. So we issued a consultation document, our sustainability appraisal and a background paper. That went out for consultation. And there were two preferred sites that came from our appraisal of our pool of reasonable alternatives, neither of which are within Gedling, as you can probably understand. Primarily, we need to ensure that there's good access to the motorway network. The first of those is the Beneley disposal site, which is in Broxtowe. It's a brownfield site primarily, has good connections with the strategic highway network, and is actually adjoining a railway line. The other preferred site that we're promoting is Ratcliffe-on-Soar Power Station. A local development order was adopted back in July 23, which granted the principle of employment on that site, and logistic uses were seen as being an appropriate use as part of that. So, and particularly for Ratcliffe, that was seen as being of wider than borough significance for Rushcliffe. So that area could be considered as of wider value for the whole of the Greater Nottingham area. So in terms of strategic distribution, we received quite a good response rate from that consultation. It is quite a niche consultation. 134 representations. Comments were primarily talking about the need for strategic distribution. Yes, we understand that. We've commissioned our own evidence and recognise that there is a need. Making sure that we've got sufficient land available, and quite understandably, a number of developers were promoting their alternative sites. Other ongoing work that we're working with before we can actually issue our plan includes strategic transport modelling. We need to understand where new housing growth is going to take place and the impacts on the highways network. We need to do a complete report of responses on all of the consultation responses that we've received. So at the moment, we've issued the responses that we've received are available, but we haven't done an officer response. So we need to do that once we issue our next stage of the plan. We needed to do a housing needs refresh, so understanding affordable housing. That was primarily because of the update of the census in 2021. So our data was relying on an earlier census, so we wanted to make sure that that was still robust. We need to ensure that we understand the infrastructure that's required for growth, so hence we have an infrastructure delivery plan. One key study that we've also commissioned is the centre study on town centres, and we had a very successful workshop here in December to understand, particularly Arnold. It was looking at a SWOT analysis on Arnold. We also are in the middle of doing habitats regulations assessment, so understanding the impact particularly on woodlark and nightjar. And we're also looking to commission a carbon reduction study as well, although that is being scrutinised by ourselves at the moment because there was a new written ministerial statement that was issued before Christmas, which talked about, or no, maybe just after Christmas actually, which talking about we perhaps can't be as ambitious as we'd like to be in terms of the targets that we want to set. So we need to stick to national targets. So, so in terms of how we take the plan forward, the next key stage is the Regulation 19 stage. That's a formal stage of consultation. It will be termed our publication draft strategic plan. That will need to go out for 6 weeks consultation, and all our documents will be made available in accordance with the regulations. We need to consult in accordance with our statement of community involvement. I think this has really come into sharp focus in the last week where Eros Borough Council didn't consult in accordance with a statement of community involvement, and now they're going to have to undertake a further round of consultation as a consequence, and that's meant a delay to their examination, which was due to start this week. So big expense for that council. We need to make sure that we consider any representations that are made. So in terms of our strategy, we have a variety of methods that we like to include. So we have a mix of modern and digital methods, and obviously more traditional methods, we try and use social media and digital media as much as we can. We make the most of our website. We have a consultation portal, which, as I said earlier, has been quite successful in terms of encouraging people to respond by email rather than letters. We try and have as many briefings as we can with members and additional meetings as and when requested. We put adverts in the press, we put posters up in shops, pharmacies, local community centres, we put site notices up. We have staffed exhibitions where needed, primarily in libraries, but any further suggestions are always welcomed. So just to nearly finished, in terms of next steps, One key thing that we need to think about now is the implications of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. A number of issues that affect good planning, but one key thing that's impacting on us at the moment is that we need to speed up plan making. And now that the requirement from that act is that we should have a plan in place within 30 months, which is a huge ask. So what we're aiming to do at the moment, because there are transitional arrangements, is that we, under the current system, have an opportunity to submit this plan up to June 2025. So that's what we're aiming to do. So to do that, and there's always going to be additional delays, we've set an ambitious timescale now where we're looking for our full draft Regulation 19 plan to go out this summer in June. And then we will submit for examination. And the hearings will then be scheduled we anticipate from about January time. And then we're in the inspector's hands in terms of when the report will be issued, which will be towards the end of 2025, and adoption hopefully by spring 26. So yes, if you want to do any research on the consultation that we've done, it's all available on the Greater Nottingham website. And yes, if you want to be consulted, you can actually register in Consult. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I suppose before going to questions, I probably should say to people that we're here to scrutinise your way of going forwards, not whether or not we agree with the responses people gave to the previous consultation, because I'm sure some people have got strong views on those one way or another. So, and we were given a draft of the consultation plan to look at. So is that what you're looking for?
Yes, the document that was attached to the report is actually more of an internal document that we use that guides certain practical measures that we would use. So it's not necessarily what we would, it provides some examples.
Okay. So if people have got suggestions, do you want them to submit them?
Yes, that would be, yeah.
Is that all right with people?
Yeah, grateful for that.
Rather than go through a whole list of...
Yes, no, what I would say that just to add to that, the formal consultation is set out in the Statement of Community Involvement, and that is available online. This example to the report was more just to give you a flavour of the kind of methods that we use to meet the requirements of the SCI.
Where can I find that community involvement statement? I've just had a quick look.
It's on the planning policy webpage.
Okay.
Under consultations, I think it's saved under that.
Right, okay, thank
And
you.
am I right thinking the Cabinet have already seen
This was signed off in 2019, and we are at the moment reviewing our timescales, as I mentioned, and that's hopefully going to happen in March.
So having said all that, are there any questions? Yes, Rachel?
Yes, I just want to know, I'm looking at 1.7 of the report that you've kindly sent out. And I can see that you're looking at transport modelling, you're looking at infrastructure, housing needs and so on. Now, as councillor representing Bestwood Village, which was particularly identified, I think, residents might have their own views about additional housing in the area, but one thing that I hear a great deal about is the nature of the transport, the road going in and out of the village. And just recently, one end of the village has been blocked. At one stage, the village was cut off. And therefore, does the transport modelling include improvement of the road network within those areas? The other thing they will comment to me about is, yes, we understand and accept that people need homes to live in, but we don't seem to get any of the community assets that ought to come along with that. Now, obviously, community assets are provided by health, you know, in terms of dentistry and doctor's surgeries and so on, or indeed by the education department in terms of local schools. And there may be other community assets they'd be interested in. And I'm just wondering to what depth you actually liaise with those authorities as well.
Thank you. Yes, so in terms of transport improvements, basically we've commissioned Sistra to undertake the transport modelling as it stands at the moment. And they are looking at all of the growth across the whole of the greater Nottingham area. And they look at mitigation measures that need to be put in place. So we have provided all the growth as we know. Our best guess as it stands at the moment in terms of, so we have the strategic sites that we understand, but we don't actually have the detail of the smaller local plan part 2 sites because they haven't been determined yet. But we understand the level of growth, we understand the volume of growth that will be inputting onto the strategic highway network. So mitigation measures are included within the transport assessments, and that forms part of the modelling going forward. So that's ongoing at the moment, and we haven't had the outcomes of that yet. In terms of community assets, the infrastructure delivery plan, which I mentioned briefly in the talk, basically we have liaised with all the infrastructure providers to understand what requirements are needed for all of the high-level strategic sites. So we have talked to health, we have talked to education, we understand what requirements are needed from the Environment Agency and Severn Trent Water. All of that and many other infrastructure providers has been included within this document. So it's a comprehensive document which will provide all the evidence that's needed to understand the infrastructure requirements. And obviously when we get to that stage, there will be a requirement for the developer to ensure that that forms part of any Section 106 agreement going forward.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thanks. Just picking up on, building on what Councillor Ellis was saying, what impact will the combined authority have on all this, with the mayoral system having delegated power for transport and skills and stuff like that? And I'm sure some planning powers come as part of that if it's cross-border. And obviously if this is for the whole of Nottinghamshire, what influence does that have on all these plans?
I'm not sure it will greatly influence what's happening going forward. I'm kind of looking towards Fran to see if she can help perhaps. I'm not 100% sure how it will change the way we're planning at the moment. I know that LURA, the Levelling Up Regeneration Act, did change the way that we can develop strategic plans. So we're now looking at those as being voluntary agreements between the districts going forward. But we still recognise the benefits of working strategically at that higher level. But I'm not quite sure how the mayoral powers will impact on us. But I can look into that and get back to you on that one.
Anybody else? No. So thank you. So just a reminder then, any suggestions to help with the consultation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. I'll get back to the agenda, sorry. So next we're on to item 6, Equality and Diversity Policy Framework and Action Plans. Are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you. So the recommendation is on page 27. It's for members to note that the work that's already been undertaken in relation to the Equality and Diversity Framework and Action Plan that was approved in October 2021. The current framework expires in 2024. And what I'm hoping this group can support with is the creation of a working group to be involved in the process of consultation on the new Equality Action Plan framework and policy that starts in 2024, 1st of April 2024. I have appended to the report a copy of the annual report that went to Cabinet in October 2023, which provides a much more detailed update of where we've got to with our current framework and action plan. We're not quite to the end of the plan period yet. As I say, that's the 31st of March. However, it's been quite a significant piece of work and quite a positive piece of work. And from the 70 actions that were in the original plan, we have 8 actions and 6 sub-actions that remain outstanding at the moment. So that's some quite incredible progress, really, against quite a hefty action plan. When we created the framework and action plan back in 2021, well, it was earlier than 2021, but when it was finally approved, it really came out of the Local Government Association Equality Framework. So they had prepared a framework against which local authorities could assess themselves in terms of their delivery on inequality and diversity. And there's 3 categories that organisations can assess themselves against. There's a developing category, an achieving category, and ultimately an excellent category. And I think when we started this piece of work back in 2020-21, the view that was, to be honest, we weren't even quite in the developing category as a council. So that first framework was to really make sure that we were improving our approach to equality through decision making, delivery of service, and that's where we sort of aimed to be fully within that category by the end of the 2021-24 framework. We have recently done another assessment of where we are against that local government framework, and I am pleased to say that we are well and truly within that developing category now, following the completion of the majority of the actions in the framework. What we're now looking to do moving forward is to move into that next level, into the achieving level, and hopefully ultimately into the excellent level. But a lot of work has been undertaken by officers, by members. We have a strategic equality and diversity group, which is made up of a cross-party group and chaired by the portfolio holder responsible for equalities. And we also have an officer group. And more recently, the staff equalities group seems to be really getting some momentum going, which is really positive. And that's a staff kind of volunteer group, not quite so structured and bureaucratic. It's just more of a, really getting a feel across the organisation as to how staff feel we are performing and delivering on the front line. And so it's, a really positive piece of work that's currently gaining momentum. So I don't propose to go through in detail. There's a lot of information in the report and the appended report from Cabinet, but we're keen that as many people as possible are involved as we're setting up our new strategy. Going to take a slightly different approach. So this was a 3-year action plan. What I'd like to do moving forward is have an annual action plan that links to service plans to really integrate equality. So it's not this separate huge thing over here that actually integrates into the work that we're already doing in our service plans, but giving managers a bigger focus on making sure that they do think about equality objectives when they are creating work plans for the year, which all, of course, pull through from the Gedling plan, which has equality objectives within it as well. So just trying to make it more business as usual. We've not had any extra resource to kind of facilitate this piece of work. It's all been done by current staff. We haven't got a dedicated equalities officer or anything like that. So I'm really pleased with what staff and members have achieved thus far and hoping to grow it moving forward. So I will stop talking now, but that's the...
Okay, so I just had a question. So I think, that's really good progress that you're making with the plan, but I suppose the real test isn't so much whether you've completed actions, but how the staff or how the residents feel about the culture of equality and diversity within both the council as an employer, but as a provider as well. So I'm asking, is that all being picked up as part of?
So what we're proposing to do is to consult with the public on the plan going forward, and really this is what we're kind of looking at. This is our updated policy, because the policy that we adopted in 2021 remains sound. Well, that's our view. There are some tweaks to it that we're putting out to consultation, but again, we want the public's view on this. So yes, we can sit here and going, we've done this, we've introduced this, ticked it, but how is that really, impacting on service delivery? For staff and for customers. So that will be picked up as part of the consultation. So do they like the way we're approaching it? Can they, those kind of questions.
Okay, does anyone else have a question on this? No. So we've been asked to set up a working group. I assume that will be not just for members of this committee, but any member of the councillors who.
I believe that's, the- yeah,
No.
yeah. Forgive me, I must say, Emma had to leave, she's not feeling very well, so just.
Okay, so are we happy to agree that recommendation?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll get it off the ground a bit quicker. Last one. Thank you. Are you doing the next item as well? The risk management scorecard.
Correct page. Yes, so this is an update on the risk management scorecard from quarter 2. So this is June to September 2023, so a little bit later on. So this report was this update was given to audit committee in December. So again, I don't tend to go through line by line on every risk, but I will point out where there has been some changes. So there has been an increase in 2 risks across the corporate register in quarter 2. So again, this is going back some time. The first increase in risk was around failure to protect and utilise physical assets. So there was an increase in the risk level here from C3 to C4, and this was due to some impacts on maintenance issues at leisure centres, predominantly Carlton Forum. The risks are being mitigated, and we're expecting the County Council to undertake some work around Easter time. But there were some issues around the drainage in relation to that building. So as an asset, that was increased for quarter 2, but we are positive that there are going to be actions, so it should reduce coming towards the end of the year. The next risk increase was risk number 7. So this is failure to react to changes in legislation. So this risk level increased, and it's quite specific, the area the risk affects, but it does have a much wider impact across the organisation. So I did ask actually Mike to hang back in case you had any questions about this particular risk increase. But this relates to a change in legislation which requires our building control officers to obtain a certain certification qualification before the 1st of April 2024. If they don't obtain the qualification, it may mean that they will not be able to deliver the tasks in the way that they currently do, and the building control function as a service could be significantly impacted if those qualifications aren't obtained. So that's why it's been added on to that risk register. But obviously we're doing everything we can to support officers through the qualification process. But it is a choice obviously for them whether they wish to go through it or whether, how they wish to progress with that. So we have increased that risk because in the absence of that qualification, there'd be a significant impact on that whole function of building control provision. Unless there's any specific questions, generally the risk levels on other risks have stayed the same. We had hoped that there would be some reduction in risk level, particularly around health and safety and emergency planning risks. So that's risk number 12. We have been, as you've probably been aware from the updates that you've received from Rebecca Hutchinson, Health and Safety Emergency Planning Officer. She's been doing some fantastic work across the council to improve our position in terms of health and safety. So the risk level did increase last year as we came out of COVID. We found that everything had been focused on emergency planning, recovery around COVID, and some of the practices around the organisation needed some closer work. So Rebecca is working on those things, but resource and capacity is an issue. Particularly getting over the line with business continuity plans and emergency planning. That's a huge task to review all those across the organisation. And we are potentially looking to get some external support just to review that, just to support Rebecca, because we've had hope for some assistance from the County Council, but unfortunately they too are struggling with emergency planning capacity as well. So unfortunately those risks which we hoped would be coming down in that quarter have stayed at the same level, but not increased. So that is some positives.
Okay, so want to take any questions? Have you finished? Sorry.
I've finished. Yes, sorry.
Sorry. Any questions on any of those risks? So the only thing I noted was that a number of the risks have got actions that were either due to be complete in December or this month. And I appreciate that this report probably got printed. You can't.
This went before,
Yes,
to
but so
audit committee in
there's no
December.
concerns about any of those actions being completed.
No, and the next, obviously, we're at the end of quarter three now, so the quarter three review is in trend, both for performance and for risk, and they'll be going forward to the relevant committees in the next couple of months. But no, nothing significant to report in terms of outstanding actions now. Apart from the ones I've mentioned around
Yes.
emergency planning and business continuity. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so are you also agenda item 8, the Gedling plan?
Yeah.
Are you two still waiting in case there's questions, because you are allowed to leave?
All right, thank you.
Sorry, it was just English.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, so Gedling plan quarter two report. Again, quarter two, so we're going back to last summer, which seems like a long time ago now. So the report sets out the performance data for the council at the end of quarter two. For your information, quarter three's performance report is being taken to Cabinet on the 31st of January. So we're very close to that report. So starting with the actions, there were 69 actions included in the new Gedling plan for delivery during 23-24, and at the end of quarter two, there were 4 actions completed, with the remaining 65 either in progress or assigned to an officer for delivery. In terms of performance indicators, there are 30 indicators, of which 16 were either on or above target, 1 was slightly below target, and 3 missed the target. And there are 8 indicators that are for data tracking purposes only. Unfortunately, due to the strikes in relation to Veolia, there was no data received for the quarter two position on 2 waste indicators, these being residual household waste and recycled household waste. The table in paragraph 2.4 of your report, which is on page 146 of your agenda, shows examples of particularly positive performance and drawing attention particularly to the average time to process housing benefit changes in circumstances which actually missed its target in quarter one, has now been turned around and is beating the 5-day target by performing 3.3 days. So that's really positive. Net additional homes provided. So we have achieved a figure of 173 in quarter two against a target of 124. And linked to that is the number of affordable homes delivered, where there's a figure of 90 achieved against a half-year target of 30. So really positive in terms of those actions. In terms of the 3 indicators that were missed, the targets are set out on page 147 of paragraph 2.5. So the percentage of minor planning applications processed within 8 weeks, we have a performance of 79.3% against a target of 86%. There has been a backlog of applications due to staff vacancies, which has caused the team to slightly miss this target, but performance is improving and is expected to be back in line in quarter 3. Number of attempts at Bonington Theatre, where we have recorded 9,386 against a target of 10,150. One reason suggested is around the lack of film releases or decent film releases over the summer because of the strikes in America. However, we'll see whether that's picked up over the Christmas period into this quarter. So number of working days lost due to sickness absence, where we have a performance of 9.66 days against a target of 9 days. This is mainly due to a high number of long-term absence cases for which managers are working with HR to support return to work at the appropriate time. In terms of compliments, paragraph 2.6 provides a summary of the position in relation to compliments, complaints and MPs letters. And these continue to be reviewed by the senior leadership team, and we have again on Thursday this week we have our quarterly performance meeting looking at complaints as well. And ending positively, in terms of achievements over the last quarter, or quarter two, these are set out in detail in the appendix to the report. But specifically wanted to highlight the Gedling Green Homes Local Authority Delivery Grant Scheme, Phase 3, which concluded in September and installed 64 energy efficiency measures into 63 individual homes. New CCTV camera installation in Colic, the provision of the free summer, which seems like a lot, but provision of free summer holiday activities by working in partnership with St George's Centre in Netherfield and Jigsaw. And the council were announced APSI award winners for the Not Green Reward Scheme. Arnold Jobs Fair attracted more than 30 employers and training advisors and over 370 job seekers, so really positive piece of work. And Green Flag Awards, again, we've achieved recognition for 5 of our parks. That's the summary. I don't know if there are any questions.
Any questions on the report? No, I suppose if you could just pass back, congratulations on the high performance.
Thank you. Yes, I will do, yeah.
Thank you. Really bad people. So, as you heard, Emma had to leave, unfortunately, but she wanted us to just check if there was anything else we wanted to add to the work programme, which is final agenda item. And there was also a timetable for the next few meetings. And certainly I was going to say that having just completed my carbon literacy training, I was very glad that we're due to review how the council's progressing. I think meeting after next, isn't it? I put that down as my pledge. So I said, when she said, "Oh, you're in luck because we're doing it," anyway, tick that off then. So yes, Russell.
I would like to propose that we have a review and a working group into how Gedling Borough Council responds to flooding. I know we're not primary flood authority, but we do play a role, and I think members would agree that we do it well in areas where we experience flooding regularly. But my experience in Colic over the last couple of weeks was that didn't go quite so well as it might have done in areas where we don't experience a lot of flooding. And I know there's going to be a section 19 report by the county, but I don't think that's going to actually look at what we do. So if we expect these flooding events to happen more frequently in the future, I think it would be useful if we did some work on that now and perhaps made some recommendations.
So do you want that to come as a report, or are you proposing something else?
I'm proposing that we set up a working group, so I guess that would be under the review, the current reviews. Would that be?
Can we take that back and discuss it with?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We can take that back, and then Emma can feed into that, and it might be that a report in the first instance, and then from that use that to feed into potential for the working group.
It might be helpful as well, just because obviously we're doing our own lessons. We're just in the middle of doing our own lessons learned as well from Storm Henk. Sort of feed that in timing wise as well. Because I think you know you're absolutely right, and there are every time there's a flood, there's areas where we recognise that this needs looking at, and this process could be a bit smoother. So yeah, it would be helpful perhaps to feed that work that we do as an officer group. And
Other comments, suggestions? Yes.
Just, I suppose it's just repetition really, that we are going to be setting up an additional working group looking at equality, the equality framework and action plan. Yeah, so that's additional. Yeah. So what's
Yeah, so we'll have that as well as the funding. So of course it'd probably be best to start with a report and then maybe use that to feed into a date for a future working group for the flooding, if that's what members want. So in the first instance, perhaps a date of a meeting that we'll bring a report to, and then from there, members could make a decision on that.
Yes,
Okay.
Seems to be fine with everyone. Okay, so I haven't been asked to raise any other business. if people have any feedback about the use of this room, if they could email myself, Ben or Emma, that would be really helpful. Thank you. And I'll see you all at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, that's fine.